Yo, what is up, y'all? My name is Rob Donaldson, and welcome back to another edition of Rob's Best Bets. And in this episode, we are taking a look at week 2 of the college football landscape. And through week 0 through week 1, we've turned out a really nice profit. I wouldn't say it's overly fantastic, but hey, profit is profit. We haven't even had a losing week just yet. And last week, to start things off, hit South Florida with one of our bigger bets on the week. We also hit Florida State on the outright money line over Alabama as well. A couple major bets hit in the mix there, mixed in with some bad bets that obviously, as we start to figure out these teams more and more, hopefully we don't have those kind of high unit wagers coming up flat the way that they did in some spots this past weekend. Now, when you are looking at week 2, a really fantastic slate. I think a lot can be derived from it in terms of kind of the perceived value of these teams after only 1 or 2 games. And for that reason, I am so jacked to jump into these picks. But first, we do need to take a second to shout out today's sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. And if you haven't already signed up using promo code ROBDFB, I highly recommend you do so. We're going to have a lot of player pick'em entries for Underdog Fantasy over on my Twitter/X page at RobDFB over the coming days. So make sure you are following me over there for those. But with all that being said, y'all, let's go ahead and jump into our week 2 picks here on Friday and Saturday. All right, first up, we are starting here on Friday in a game between James Madison and Louisville. And obviously, if you follow James Madison over the years, whether it's in the Kirk Cignetti era or this current era under Bob Chesney, they have been a bane on the existence of the ACC because they've been picking those teams off. North Carolina, notably last year, they pretty much sent Mac Brown packing into retirement. And this year, they still have a ton of talent offensively and defensively as well. And what we saw in week 1 from James Madison was they're deciding to go with Alonzo Barnett, who is the returning starter, the incumbent starter for James Madison last season coming into this year. And even though they added Matthew Saluka through the portal, it didn't really matter because Alonzo Barnett played better in week 1. He played more snaps. I think he's actually the better quarterback personally as well. So I am very glad to see that that's the direction that they're going with here. And I get it. Jeff Brom is one of the tough coaches to kind of game plan for because they are going to put up points. But guess what? James Madison is going to put up points too. And when you're talking about getting 14 points, I think that's just because of the ACC tax in terms of, a Power 4 team going up against the G5. And I really do think we can reap some benefit in fading that narrative. So let's go ahead and take the Dukes here, getting 14 points for 3 units for our first bet here in week 2. For pick number 2, we are going out to a game here between Northern Illinois and Maryland. And when you're looking at this matchup here, Northern Illinois is kind of in that purgatory state of, I don't know if they're ever going to get back to the Jordan Lynch era. That's just kind of so far out the window at this point. They've kind of cemented themselves as a pretty average team for the most part. And on the other side with Mike Locksley in Maryland, they're trying to buck that narrative. And for the first time, and I think the entire Mike Locksley era, oh man, I might start to believe because Malik Washington at quarterback, this true freshman that they have that I've only watched 1 game of, my goodness, man, this guy looks dynamic. The same way I talk about CJ Bailey at NC State, I think Malik Washington is one of those guys who's in the mix to be that level of freakish. And a lot of people are talking about Bryce Underwood in the Big Ten as a true freshman starter. I think Malik Washington is flying so below the radar that it would be inexcusable not to back him while we still have the chance to. So let's go ahead and lay the 17.5 points here with the Terps for 2 units for our second bet here on Friday. For pick number 3, we are heading out to that Saturday slate in the noon Eastern time window between Virginia and NC State. And I just talked about him, but CJ Bailey, y'all, what an absolute freak. I mean, this guy might be the best quarterback in college football this season, genuinely. When you're talking about the upside, when you're talking about the athleticism, when you're talking about the velo that he puts on some of these passes that are hitting their marks with precision, I don't know if anybody impressed me more than him in week 1, genuinely speaking. And when you're talking about this game in particular, my goodness, the cat's not out of the bag yet on this guy, but it's going to be really, really fast. And I do feel like when you're talking about Virginia, this is a team that I'm not really bought in on being, respectable or opposing, this season in the ACC. And from that standpoint, we are getting a really solid money line price here with the NC State Wolfpack. And I say we go ahead and take it for 4 units for our third bet here in week 2. For pick number 4, we are heading down to Austin, Texas, where we have the Longhorns taking on the San Jose State Spartans. And San Jose State, man, they dropped a really easy game against Central Michigan at home. It should have been a win, but they fell flat. They were turning the ball over. They were sloppy. They missed some kicks on special teams. It was just not an overall good first showing. And now, it's kind of one of those things where the narrative going into this game is San Jose State, the 0-1 G5, taking on Texas after a really close, tough loss against Ohio State. Texas is going to run up the score, win 63-0. That's how this game is going to go. I say absolutely not. Ken Niumatalolo is still a fantastic coach. One of the best coaches, I would say, in all of college football. And if there's any coach that I really trust to formulate a game plan to keep them in it as long as possible, I think Ken's the man. And I get it. Texas is probably going to win this game, but I do feel like this could be a lot closer than people think. I think this could be driving a lot of social media fodder when you're talking about the first half. And for those reasons, let's go ahead and take the Spartans, getting the 36.5 points for 4 units. And for an additional half unit, let's go ahead and place a bet on San Jose State on the money line through the first half. Crazy odds, way too crazy. I get it. Texas could come out and steamroll, and we might just be sitting on a cover if we're lucky, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I think Ken Niumatalolo and this Spartan squad are going to be able to put their best foot forward after a really tough loss, and man, this could be a really fun one, and we could really know how our day is going to go through this noon slot because we have 2 massive bets right out of the gate on Saturday. All right, next up, we are taking a look at a rivalry game that hits close to home for me as a native Iowan, and we are talking about the Cy-Hawk rivalry game between Iowa and Iowa State in Ames. It's a really big game. It's a big game every year. It feels like a close game every year, and last year, Iowa dominated for about, 3 and 3 quarters of the game, and it didn't come to fruition on a last-second 57-yard field goal make by Iowa State to take the lead for the first time all game. And now, Iowa's kind of targeting some revenge, and I do think they have a really good chance at getting that revenge, but hey, we don't even need to take them on the outright money line because we're getting a field goal on most sportsbooks. We're getting that 3-point margin. That is huge for this game. And I already did a video actually breaking this game down specifically that I will link in the bio section below or to the description box. It's on my second channel that just covers specifically Iowa football. But if you are interested in a deep dive, that's where you want to go. But hey, let's go ahead and take the Hawkeyes here, getting the 3 points for 2 units here on Saturday in the Cy-Hawk rivalry game. All right, next up, we are taking a look at a really fun game between Illinois and Duke, and this is still in that noon Eastern time window, but it's a really fantastic game when you're talking about 2 teams that are kind of those dark horses to make the college football playoff. And when you're looking at Illinois and Luke Altmaier and Brett Bielema and all these returning starters, my goodness, man, they should be able to score this season at the very least. I think they're going to be a good team defensively as they kind of get more into the season. But Darian Mensah and Duke, after a really slow start in week 1, I do feel like they're going to pick it up here in week 2. And in this game, I think we're going to see a lot of dueling offense between these two teams. Right now, we are staring at an over-under of 49.5, and I say we go ahead and take that over for 2 units here on Saturday. All right, for our next bet here, we are once again staying in that noon Eastern time window. When I told y'all that we are going to know how our day is going at noon Eastern time on Saturday, I guess I really meant it. And this was by no means my intent, but hey, let's go ahead and take a look at this game here between Liberty and Jacksonville State. I get it, it's a little bit off the radar, but these are the games that I really, really like. And when you are looking at Liberty, there's a lot going on here in terms of, I think the Hugh Freeze talent is now out the window. Caden Salter is also out the door as well. NIL has kind of hurt Liberty in the grand scheme of things when you're talking about their stranglehold on this conference. And Jacksonville State, yeah, obviously they are turning over Rich Rod, but in week 1, man, did their defense show up against UCF. Yes, there were kind of some weird conditions going on. There was a lightning delay that felt like it took forever as well, but they played really impressively throughout the entire game. I actually thought they were the better team over UCF in week 1. And in this game, they're at home. They're getting 6.5 points. I feel like Liberty is more of a brand than an actual good team right now. And for those reasons, I say we go ahead and take Jacksonville State. Getting the 6.5 points for 2 units here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are finally out of that noon Eastern window. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. And we are looking at the 3:30 p.m. Eastern time window now, where we have a really, really fun game between Kansas and Missouri. Old school Big 12. I'm glad that they're playing this game. And when you're looking at Kansas, they have looked incredible early on. Jalen Daniels looks fantastic. Their transfer talent on offense specifically, man, do they look athletic. Man, do they look talented. And Lance Leipold, it kind of feels like he has a group that if they keep rolling the way that they've been rolling, they can take the Big 12 by storm and win this thing outright and win the conference. I truly believe that. And Missouri, we'll see. Obviously they played an FCS in week 1. They really did well. I think after the kind of the middle point in the second quarter is when they really turned it on and ended up really storming ahead. But I'm not really bought in to Missouri just yet, especially in the post-Brady Cook era. And I get it. Kansas is going on the road here after 2 home games, but I really do feel like they are the better team over Missouri. And in this matchup, they're getting 6.5 points. I say we take them for 4 units here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are staying in that same time slot where we have a game between Bowling Green and Cincinnati. It's a battle of Ohio. It's not a huge battle of Ohio, but it's a battle, and both schools, guess what, are in Ohio. And when you are looking at this game here between Bowling Green and Cincinnati, one thing comes to mind: inept offense. Both teams last week could not put up points for the life of themselves. Cincinnati looked absolutely dreadful. And when you're looking at Bowling Green, they took back the opening kick return for a touchdown, but after that, just 19 points against Lafayette, the FCS Lafayette, that is. And when you're looking at this matchup, I get it. 46.5 is obtainable for a lot of these types of teams, especially when you look at scoring averages over the past few years from both of these squads. But I feel like both of these teams this year couldn't get there if they even tried to sort of collude for this number. So let's go ahead and take the under of 46.5 points for 2 units here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are taking a look at another game that I do think features some inept level of play. And we're talking about UAB and Trent Dilfer taking on Navy and Brian Newberry. And, I can feel jaded about how Ken Nuamatalolo was sort of outed from Navy. I personally think it was a bunch of bullshit. But when you are talking about Brian Newberry and what he's accomplished early in his tenure, how can you not be impressed, right? He has been absolutely successful early in the outset of his tenure at Navy. And on the other side, boy, oh boy, can I not say the same thing about Trent Dilfer. I think Dilfer has been one of the biggest joke hires in quite some time, and this team, honestly, has performed just like that. A joke. And this over-under is sitting at 60.5, and I really do want to lay the points here with Navy, but I really do think the correct play is to take Navy and this under to sort of bury this score down, because I don't know if UAB is going to score in this matchup, to be completely honest with you. So let's go ahead and take the under of 60.5 points for 3 units here on Saturday. All right, next up, we're going out to a game here between Delaware and Colorado. And Colorado's defense really surprised me in week 1, taking on Haynes King and Georgia Tech. They held them in check for most of the game, to be completely honest with you. And if Caden Salter was a little bit more efficient, again, he's one of those guys that if he can figure it out on the passing side of things, he is one of the more dynamic players in all of college football, but that didn't come to fruition in week 1. Against Delaware in this game, I feel like it has a really good chance to come to fruition, and with the way that Colorado's defense played last week, I feel like if they hold Delaware to under 14 points, this number is going to hit. So let's go ahead and lay the 23.5 points here with Colorado for 3 units here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are taking a look at the other Service Academy, Army, taking on Kansas State and the Wildcats, who have looked absolutely dreadful in the early goings. Now, do I think this is going to be a long kind of stretch for Kansas State in terms of performing the way that they have performed? I don't think so. I mean, I think the upside, or the downside rather, is actually there for them to have a really bad year, because Avery Johnson cannot move the ball through the air. This guy is a running back playing quarterback, and he's not even running the ball overly effective in the early goings here either. And when you are talking about this game going up against Army and Monken, I do feel like Army has a really good shot to avenge that loss last week to Tarleton in a game where I think the defense underperformed based on the expectations set forth by Monken and this coaching staff. And I don't know if Army can hold in the game the entire way through when you're talking about Kansas State's overall talent, but I do really want to take a shot on them in the first half, and I don't want to be overly invested because this could absolutely be a blowout on the side of Kansas State. But let's go ahead and take a 1-unit stab at Army on the first half money line here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are taking a look at one of my favorite games on the board for Saturday. It's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time between Arizona State and Mississippi State. And we took Southern Miss last week to have a really good game against Mississippi State, but what I learned in watching Mississippi State and this new look team is, man, they can get after the quarterback. It wasn't just that they were playing Southern Miss. No, they've got some dogs on that D-line. And also, offensively, yes, they had some miscues, but they do have some really good athletes that weren't there last year in the fold. And I do feel like year 3 under Lebby could be a really good launching pad year. Arizona State is one of those teams that I kind of am willing to sell on. I think they're going to be a good team, but in the grand scheme of things, the way that they played last year, kind of overachieving, it almost wants me to kind of fade them in terms of spreads in the early going of this season. And in this game, we are getting the perfect spread with Mississippi State at home getting 6.5 points. And guys, I say we go ahead and load up on this one. Our first 5-unit bet of the college football season here on the Bulldogs. I really do think they're going to show up. I think they're going to win this thing outright. But hey, we're getting a touchdown essentially spotted to us. I say we go ahead and take it for 5 units for our second to last bet here on Saturday. All right, next up, we are taking a look at a matchup here between Stanford and BYU. And when you're talking about Stanford, their stock might be at an all-time low. And that really does beg a question in my eyes. Do we feel like there's a chance to buy low or just buy at a good Stanford spot where, yeah, they're bad, but they're not that bad? I feel like we've kind of reached that point here, especially in the early goings after a loss to Hawaii. And when you are looking at this matchup here against BYU, I do feel like BYU is the better team, and I do think they're going to win this game. But there is a chance, I think, that through one half of play, Stanford could be right there and right in this game. And they're being treated right now like they're a lowly G5, and maybe that's what they are ultimately in terms of the talent that they have on the roster. But I am willing to actually back Stanford in this game. Not going crazy, but let's go ahead and actually take them on the full game spread, getting 18.5 points here for 2 units. And for an additional full unit, let's go ahead and take a stab on that first half money line, paying 5-1 here as well. All that being said, I really want to thank you guys for checking out today's video, and I want to give you guys a massive shout out for the support in week 1 on the video that we posted over there, because over 12,000 views, man, that's a crazy number for this channel. And yes, we have been growing. You guys have been awesome for multiple years now. I think I started making videos over here on YouTube in 2021, 2020 maybe. Obviously, you know, the videos predate that all the way back to 2014, 2015, but that was different content. You guys are kind of your own little audience, and I appreciate you guys a ton, man. It makes it a ton of fun looking at the comments, seeing the engagement on social media, and obviously when we're winning bets as well. That's a really fantastic feeling knowing that I'm helping you guys out and kind of going through the Saturday slates and the Friday slates with you guys in the college football section as well. But with all that being said, I appreciate you guys, and I will see you in a future video. Take it easy.